my own education and through conversations with peers that oftentimes students forget or actively neglect to portray differences in a positive light. This can be through casual conversations in the hallways or prompted class discussions, with a goal to make a Farmington community more appreciative for diverse perspectives, backgrounds, and traditions. I believe that, once again, contextualizing cultures in an educational background is necessary. So part of the research I did this past summer was with Ms. Gutierrez, who is a New York University research aide and librarian specialist. And when I began my research, I found it incredibly important to narrow down my search. I knew I wanted to discuss media in relation to Hispanics and the Hispanic portrayal of individuals, but she was largely helpful in differentiating Hispanics based on regional influence and the notion that broad-scale media neglects to recognize various Hispanics for various assets within both the professional community and personal community. She discussed with me the notion that media perpetually resonates with the common belief that Hispanics have higher crime rates, which I will discuss in a bit further. And we discussed the importance and significance of proper background research in order to not only combat but prevent further incorrect analysis. So in relation to direct media tone, we found that oftentimes viewed in articles, social media posts, and televised programs, that Hispanics have a direct persuasion against their efforts, and in which those have strategically negatively implied tones. Upon further research that I conducted post-interview with Ms. Gutierrez, I found that UCLA's branch of the National Hispanic Media Coalition conducted their own open-ended survey prompts with regards to Hispanic perceptions within various locations around the United States. And along the right side of the board, you can see some of the responses. As well, I discussed with a Notre Dame professor, Professor Prufoy, who is a social theorist and diversification professor, the significance of crime rates not only for Hispanics but for a multitude of minorities in order to express negative tones and implications from large-scale broadcasters. We found that historically and in modern day context, there is a large reflection of perpetuated negative depictions due to improper statistical research. In this map, we can see an example, and the inherent negative aspect is the notion that the state of Michigan not only has a very low crime rate for Hispanics, but no Hispanics at all. So that would be entirely incorrect. And on the contrary, on the highly opposing and juxtaposing side, we can see that the state of New York has an extremely large bias and ratio of crime rates amongst Hispanics. But upon research and reading this specific article further, I found that they used bias to solely look at the numbers of Hispanics within incarcerated locations, and without taking a proper statistical reference point to the state population. For example, in the state of Michigan, there is a very low Hispanic crime rate percentage because there are not very many Hispanics, whereas on this map it showcases that there are a lot of Hispanics being incarcerated in the state of New York, but it neglects to show that there is a large percent of Hispanics living in the state. Furthermore, and in the last regard, I discussed with Dr. Delgado this past summer the notion of television and movies in relation to Hispanic depictions. We discussed the increased influence of TV shows and movies and how they are progressing to an entirely positive light of Hispanics and additional cultures integrated into everyday conversations. Specifically, we discussed varied appeal in relation to both child demographics and adult demographics in the media, and specifically related to televised programming. We found that children's shows had a wide range of additional Spanish cultures represented. For example, Dora and Diego represent one aspect of Hispanic cultures, whereas Nina's World, which is a newer Disney Channel TV show, showcases an additional islander perspective on Hispanics. We also found that adult shows have differing channels which take crime rates and subjectivity and bias out of the conversation entirely. Specifically in relation to cooking channels and travel channels, these programs aim to explicitly showcase positive relations and positive aspects of cultural integration into everyday conversations. This is my own personal analysis on 3 different aspects I discussed and came up with in relation to my research. The first aspect that will be discussed is educational foundations. The second is exploration beyond grammatical significance of language, which is not specific to Hispanic cultures but can easily be applied to such, as well as the third notion that cultures are more than cliches. So for educational foundations, I came up with a rough draft system for the potential integration of positive cultural compliance for students. Primarily starting at the elementary age, the studies by many educators and professional psychologists have found that younger ages have proven to be able to retain grammatical structures much better than growing and already grown children. So I believe that the cultural curriculum needs to have an aspect of grammatical structure acquisition starting from a young and youthful age with a formal understanding of the language. For example, right now there is a 7th and 8th grade curriculum for language beginning, but I believe that shifting that to elementary age and prolonging the courses from a 2-year program to a 6-year program would ultimately make the transition from only speaking English to learning a language much more seamless. As well, switching on to middle school, I would like to preface that I believe the grammatical structure and retention and learning rate of formalized language should continue through middle school, but there should be a rudimentary understanding regarding the multifaceted aspects of culture and histories within the classroom. I believe, and through my own coursework, have found that if culture is integrated into literature as well as historical courses and significance, then students are more likely to apply it and believe it to be more significant in their lifetime. And with those 2 elementary and middle school foundations of grammatical structure and respect for cultures based on educational significance, this is when the high school age demographic should be brought in. And this is when I believe that individualized projects centric to coursework is necessary to continue on the path of cultural compliance and education. For example, students should be able to seamlessly integrate various cultures and perspectives into their coursework without it seeming like an additional research project or chore. And overall, the goal of this is to accurately and positively integrate cultural variation within the classes. As well, going on to my conclusion, cultures are more than their cliches. I believe that student body participation through involvement, perceptions, and engagement will be accessed in all of these, and improvements overall for a mindset shift from cultural appreciation as a chore to as a positive asset is met with an intention to foster contribution and immersion of culture. I believe that cultures are extremely significant, and integrating them into an everyday context is entirely necessary for the flourishment and welcoming of all individuals, both in educational context and in social. And that is all.
Will you be receiving your master's degree along with your diploma? That was like a master's thesis. Amazing. And I took a lot of notes. So
Thank you.
Spectacular. Thank you. A lot of really good food for thought for us.
Thank you. Yeah, I did it largely on part of my own aspiration, and I found that it would be a wonderful experience to do this as part of my IB curriculum. So yeah, thank you for your time.
Phenomenal. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? Yes, Ms. Heinrich.
You can't get enough compliments, but I'm really impressed with your passion. I mean, every time I hear a student speak, I want to go back to school. But yeah, you're doing a great job, and I'm really impressed the way you reached out to college professors and, broaden your perspective. And so a nice testament to you and your work and your teachers for supporting you. So thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to see what you are doing and what you are passionate about.
Mr. Walker?
That was an absolutely outstanding presentation. And I apologize if I missed it, but what are your professional aspirations?
So for my undergraduate degree, I plan on majoring in marketing and going into sports in impact consulting. But overall, I would like to earn a PhD and graduate degree in sociology.
Well, you're well on your way.
Absolutely.
Fantastic job.
Thank you.
My goodness. Yes, Ms. Smith.
I want to congratulate you on the hard work that you are doing, and your grandparents spoke very highly of you. They spoke very highly of both of you. And so you have a very strong support system, and I'm proud of you, even though I can't be a little biased. I am strictly a Farmington fan. So congratulations on all of the work that you have done. And I looked at what you put down for the adults, but I was a little mad because you didn't put Selena in there. So, but congratulations on all of your hard work, and congratulations on your endeavors in the future. And as we say at Farmington, make it fly, Falcons. Thank you.
If I could say one thing before you go away, Isabel. When Isabel came to me, I think last year actually, we talked, and then over the summer, I really was excited about highlighting for the board and for our community what an international baccalaureate experience can be and the level of research that students do. And we do this in all of our schools, but specifically there's an expectation that by your end of your international baccalaureate experience, you're going to delve into research. This is legitimate research, graduate level research, that you're looking at statistical analysis and contacting multiple sources. So we appreciate that, so we can highlight the IB. But I also wanted to highlight the importance of representing positive voices for Hispanics, for Latinos, and you are an example of that. You personally are an example of the best and the brightest for our young Latinos in this country. So we wish you the very best at Notre Dame, and we thank you for sharing your wonderful presentation of esperar, which we who speak Spanish know it means two things. It means to wait for something, but also to hope. And we can't wait to see what happens in your future life. Please stay in touch.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you again. All right, moving on to approval of the agenda. Yes, Ms. Heinrich.
I move that the agenda for the regular Board of Education meeting Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024 be approved as presented.
Support.
Motion to approve the agenda by Ms. Heinrich, supported by Mr. Walker. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions? Motion passes. Okay. Good evening, board colleagues and guests. I have to say that today has been a miraculous day. I have been tutoring children in 2 Detroit schools for the past several months, and every single group of students with whom I work experienced or demonstrated tremendous growth today. On top of that, 2 little girls who had been in other groups and had been really struggling, we decided to form our own separate group. And these 2 little girls today, they were playing a word game, and they kept cheating for each other. So when the one student would roll, they were playing an MW, because they're struggling with M's and W's. When one student would throw an M, she would turn the die so that it had a W on it so her partner could move up a space. And then when her partner rolled a W, she would quickly change it to an M so that her partner would move up a space. And it brought me to tears watching these 2 little girls, they're first graders, support one another in this way and encouraging one another. And one person got a little bit ahead and she said, you know, I'm just going to go back down the ladder a little bit so that we're the same. Can you imagine how the world would be if more of us could work together in that way? And so it is in that spirit that I hope as a community and a board we can continue to come together. These are difficult times in the world, difficult times in our community, and my hope is that we can continue to collaborate and work together, building bridges of understanding and come together to heal our community and heal our world. So I wanted to start with that. Some other updates that I'd like to share. At our last board meeting, I was in New Orleans at the National School Board Association Annual Leadership Conference for about 4 days. And I'm happy to report that some of the very same sorts of things that we've been looking at as a board over the past 3 years and currently around reimagining our middle and high schools, that work is already underway in other school districts throughout the country, in just little pockets here and there. So we have a lot of models. I've brought back a lot of different models that we can take a look at, even one from Hazel Park, where they're doing some really innovative things right here in Michigan. So I brought that information back for us, along with a lot of contacts, so that if we want more information, we can reach out. Tomorrow, I will be going to Lansing for the behind the scenes at the Capitol Spring opportunity that school board members have to meet with members of our state Senate and House. And when I went to the behind the scenes at the Capitol event in the fall, I was advocating for an update in the content, skill and content standards to which we as educators are expected to teach at each grade level. And to also, to request that we do an update of that, and also to request a move away from standardized testing as the primary way that we track and report and measure student learning. So at that time, my pitch was, you know, in a few months, it will be 2025, and we will be a quarter of the way done with the 21st century. A quarter of the way done with the 21st century. And yet, the state still mandates that we must teach to content and skill standards that were developed in the 2000s, but without the benefit of the past 20 years of information around how living has changed and careers have changed. So if the state is holding us accountable to teach our children this body of skills and content that they need to be successful in a century in which they will never live, are we not doing a disservice to our students? Ought we not update our content and skill standards to include things like immersion in cultures, as our IB student just shared with us? Ought we not to include more around creative problem solving, civil discourse, those kinds of things? We are long overdue for an update in our state level content and skill standards. And the members of Congress with whom I met, about a dozen different people over the past several months, and many members from the Michigan Department of Education, they agree. And many of our members of Congress who are former teachers who currently sit on the education subcommittees of their respective houses, yes, they agree. They also agree that we know from many decades of research that standardized testing does not accurately reflect the full amount of growth that each student experiences in a year's time. Some students don't test well, some students have made gains that they aren't given opportunities to demonstrate those on the annual test. Also, the test is given at the beginning of April, which is not the end of the year. We still have a couple of months of teaching and learning to do. In any event, there are many, many other proven ways to assess and report student learning growth. And ought we not to update the way we assess and report student learning so that every student has an opportunity to be celebrated for the learning growth they experience in a year's time? That was my pitch in the fall. They all said yes. Yes, you're right on both counts, with the standards, with the testing, yes, but it's not a priority. It's not a priority, so absolutely nothing has happened. I quit my full-time teaching job this year to advocate for these changes full-time. And there's crickets, just crickets. Nothing is being done. No committees are being formed to begin to make these changes. But I'm going back tomorrow with new information and a different pitch. At the New Orleans conference, I went to many, many sessions where I heard about all of the things that they're doing in Oklahoma around these changes, these kinds of changes. And in Texas, even. And in Brooklyn, New York. In Ohio, just south of our border. New Hampshire, Massachusetts. So my pitch tomorrow will be, how economically behind do we want the state of Michigan to be before we are going to update our content and skill standards for the 21st century? And also, how behind do we want our students to be as the state continues to require that we teach to these skill and content standards that are from last century? 0% of our students are going to be living and working in the 20th century. And so we can keep not making it a priority at the state level, but that is not going to serve our students or our state. So I'm hoping that maybe, I know I'm just one person, one small voice, but we'll see. We'll see what we can make happen. One other piece on that, I don't know if any of you remember the little sort of like nursery rhyme song about the inchworm. Inchworm, inchworm, measuring the marigolds, you and your arithmetic, you'll probably go far. Inchworm, inchworm, measuring the marigolds, seems to me you ought to see how beautiful they are. Standardized testing is not the only or the best way to measure student growth and learning in a year's time. We have many other approved ways of measuring student growth and learning that will enable us to see the beauty in each child and celebrate each child's growth and learning each year, rather than only those who jump over some particular score on the test. I know that on May 14th, we're having a community dialogue here on reimagining our high schools, and we welcome you to come and share your ideas with us as we continue to engage in that exciting process. And I know that there have been a lot of things going on in our schools in our community lately. Even though we have continued to have some difficulties, we can still celebrate the learning and successes of our students, that our students are experiencing, and speaking to both aspects of that, both the difficulties and the successes. Dr. Delgado will be giving us a detailed description. For example, he'll be talking about the successes of the hackbots at the world competition. Yes, go hackbots, 3414. As well as speaking to all of the things that we are doing to deal with the DEI issues that we continue to face. So thank you for your patience with my long announcements this evening. All right. Next, we have correspondence. Ms. Heinrich?
Yes, the board has received communications regarding a town hall invitation, the International Baccalaureate Program, tools for creating high-quality change in scope applications, a reading program, the introduction of Bernadette Curtis, the district's fund balance, changing the narrative, recommendations for Farmington Public Schools, North Farmington presents Cinderella, DPS literacy plan, DPS academic achievement gap, a motion to implement an education plan, and board president responds to the fund balance concerns. The board acknowledges communications and responds when appropriate. A list of correspondence can be found in the board packet, accessible on the Farmington Public Schools website.
Thank you, Ms. Heinrich. For our legislative update, there is nothing new to report this evening. Moving on to district updates.
I can share just a little bit about legislative. If
Oh, okay. Sure.
So I know that all eyes are on the school aid fund and the budget right now. This is the week of the MSBO conference. Our own Jennifer Kaminsky and team are up there as well. I believe it's in Grand Rapids this year. And so we're really, encouraged by some of the governor's recommendations for continued school funding and really kind of creative ways for looking at funding the per pupil. There are also bills that we're keeping an eye on with dyslexia, as well as possible mandatory kindergarten, and then a school librarian bill that's coming through. So we're keeping our eyes on that, but really right now all eyes are on the budget. We as a group, K-12 Alliance, is really a southeastern organization, policy advocacy organization that many of our superintendents are part of, and we're really advocating for two things. Really, the preservation of the school aid fund to be strictly limited to K-12 schools, and it often gets rated for community colleges and other aspects. We desire for those to be funded separately, so the school aid fund was for K-12 public education, so we're advocating for that. And the second thing is really imploring the legislature to balance at least the school portion of the budget by June 30th, so we know how we can set our budget. And so a couple of years ago, with that advocacy from K-12 Alliance and other groups, they actually came through and they passed that budget independent of the overall budget. So we're asking for that again, so we can make a budget with real numbers as opposed to assumed numbers. So that's just a little bit on legislative.
Thank you very much.
So, you're welcome.
I have some legislative updates, too.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Dr. Delgado, for your quick, short presentation about legislation. I've had the opportunity, and this is not a good and welfare, I've had the opportunity to work with Dr. Coffin and Mr. Smith on helping students get signed up to work with the Civic classroom to get students registered to vote. What parents don't know is students can register at the age of 16. Dr. Delgado and Dr. Coffin have been working with the school district throughout North Farmington and Farmington. We do have the Secretary of State coming in. She's not coming in on the 27th. That date is being changed. We don't know the date yet.
Okay.
But with that being said, we don't want to put the date out and then she has to change it again.
Right.
So at the end of the day, we are working with a company that is willing to do everything. They will be paying for everything. We do not have to pay for anything. They will continue with the information, with working with the curriculum with Dr. Coffin as well as Mr. Smith on helping students be educated on the democracy part. It's nonpartisan. They will have students registered. North Farmington is working with the Secretary of State, but Farmington is working, they have already been doing it. So that's part of you might as well call that legislation, because we're teaching students how to be proactive on registering and having that information as not only identification for themselves, but knowing the process of being registered voters.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Smith. That's excellent news. Okay.
So good evening. Let me continue with a district update. So a couple things to share. So our students continue to impress. The HOSA States competition was held at the Grand Traverse Resort April 18th through 20th. For those of you who don't know, HOSA is the Health Occupations Students of America. And we have many of our Farmington public school students who participate in HOSA. There were over 2,600 high school student participants in over 50 events. 35 Farmington high school students were among the competitors. We did very well with 3 medalists eligible to represent Michigan at the HOSA International Conference taking place in Houston, Texas on June 9th. And then we had 9 students placing in the top 8 and a Michigan HOSA State Board officer. So just so you know, some of the categories that our young people scored very high in the top 8, so they're ranked in the top 8. We have 3rd place in medical, law, and physics. We have 2nd place in prepared speaking. Top 8 in clinical laboratory science, top 8 in health informatics, top 8 in the HOSA Bowl, top 8 in medical law and ethics, top 8 in medical math, and top 8 in pathophysiology, what we all do on the weekend, right? So our students, again, continue to impress wonderful young people, and we congratulate them, as well as Janet Cadeau and all of their wonderful teachers in the CTE program in our school district. Additionally, the Hackbots, we've talked about the Hackbots, Team 3414. So they went for the 3rd consecutive year to Houston, Texas for the World Championship in FIRST Robotics. They did very, very well, and one of the indicators of success is not just where you score in the actual finals, it's whether or not you are recognized by your peers and other teams to partner with them on, for those of you who know robotics speak, if it's the Blue Alliance or the Red Alliance. And so it's a great honor to be selected by the top teams. And so they were the second pick of the third-seeded alliance in the Newton division at Worlds. And that allowed us to win our first ever playoff match at Worlds. So not only did we win a playoff match, which was a large stepping stone, but we also received an award at the World Championship level. We won the same award in Michigan, but this is on a national level. It's the Team Sustainability Award sponsored by Dow, and it celebrates and recognizes a team which has developed sustainable practices to have a positive environmental impact and achieve long-term continuity. So they wanted to thank the board for their support, the community for their support, not only in kind of encouraging them and attending, but also helping to fund some of their expeditions. But they make us proud, and this is just an incredibly representative group of students from all aspects of our school district with all abilities, and they always find a way for each individual to contribute to the robot and to the success of FIRST Robotics. They also serve as mentors to our elementary and middle school teams, and that was one of the reasons they won the Sustainability Award for that, really establishing a feeder pattern here in Farmington Public Schools. So congratulations to the Hackbots.
They also come to provide tutoring at
They do.
FAP and
At
Super
FAP and on
Saturdays.
Saturdays.
Mhm,
Yep.
regularly.
Yep. One other thing to mention, under the leadership of Allison Robinson, our new Director of Safety as well as Athletics, we have an up and running district safety team. They met again last week. That includes representatives from our district as well as the community, including our chiefs of police and our school resource officers, talking a lot about preparedness. We are partnering with Oakland Schools to go through what's called a prepare training, which really evaluates your emergency operations plan, those red flip charts, all of our procedures and practices to make sure that we are following best practices. Just last week at our leadership team meeting, we had a training for all of our district administrators on Narcan. If you heard any of Sheriff Bouchard and other law enforcement officials talk about the fentanyl and the real danger to all of us, but especially to our youth, Narcan is really a life-saving opportunity for us to have, and now we have them at schools. Our school resource officers always had them. Now we have all of our administrators trained, and we have those kits at every single school and building as well. We have trained over the last couple of years not only ALICE training, options-based active shooter training, Narcan, stop the bleed with tourniquet application, as well as CPR and defibrillator training. So we are really, really prepared. We will continue to stay vigilant and in partnership with our law enforcement, make sure that our students and staff are well prepared and well protected. So I just wanted to bring that up and thank Mrs. Robinson for her leadership in this new endeavor.
Wonderful.
And finally, I do want to make a statement. On the back table there is a copy of my statement that is for the community, as well as two documents that speak to our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Mr. Smith is here with us, our Director of DEI, as well as pulled right from our Positive Culture Handbook, our Code of Conduct, the rights as well as responsibilities for students in our district, as well as staff in our district. And so I wanted to read this statement and share it with you regarding a most recent incident in our school district. So the primary goal of a school district is to create an environment of strong professional relationships between students and staff, governed by clear policies and procedures, and guided by a vision of high academic and behavioral standards and expectations. When I was made aware of yet another incident of a substitute teacher interaction with a student involving racially insensitive language, my heart sank. Like many on our board and in the community, we collectively sighed, "Not again." And while with each and every incident, the context does matter, thorough investigations and due process are required, and both accountability and restorative practices are implemented, it's clear that we are all exasperated with this topic. After the last incident a few months ago, our team came together to examine several items, including the onboarding of new and third-party employees, beginning a review under Mr. Walker's leadership of policies and procedures on our board subcommittee, and reviewing feedback from prior student, staff, and community surveys, including the superintendent coffees and conversations I did this fall with members from our African American community. I know Mr. Smith is also here, and he's done extensive surveying of our students to gather their perspectives around DEI items and efforts. We also debriefed with our Board of Education at a retreat and with our entire 60-member leadership team on both short-term and long-term goals related to this dynamic in our school district. One of the short-term goals includes a meeting of administrators with me, with our HR department, with our DEI department, and our special education representatives to examine the possible creation of pre-screened, culturally competent pool of substitutes. In a big district like ours, we have 9,000 students, we have over 1,000 staff members, we have over 100 absences a day. So 150, 170 on some of the, on Fridays and some other areas. So it's impossible for us to just simply fire a substitute company. We have to really be creative. So we've talked about maybe creating this pre-screen, culturally competent pool of substitutes. In short, you can't work for us if you don't understand us. Lack of cultural competency has led to conflict in our district. And while nobody, students nor staff, gets a pass on using racially charged language, we have higher expectations for our adults in those moments. Another result of these efforts since the last incident was the creation of a memo for employees that I referenced last meeting, created in our Human Resources Department, which includes the articulation of our expectations in very explicit fashion, stating in part, I read this last time, I want to read it again, I want to make it explicitly clear that any use of racial slurs, derogatory remarks, or discriminatory language in front of or with students will not be tolerated under any circumstances. Such behavior not only violates our vision and culture statements as well as board policy, but also undermines the trust and confidence that students, parents, community members, and colleagues place in us. So this statement, my statement, along with the two handouts outlining the ongoing work of diversity, equity, and inclusion in our district, and from our Positive Culture Handbook, the list of student and staff rights and responsibilities are provided for your reference. We can post these on our website as well. I would encourage you to share them with others in our broader community and on social media as well. There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation, and sharing this collectively shows that partnership. And so it's my hope that through this transparency and partnership, we can come together as a school community to create the intellectually, physically, and emotionally safe environment that all our students and staff deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Delgado.
Dr.
We've got to move on to the next agenda item. Thank you, Ms. Smith.
I just wanted to tell him thank you
Okay.
and please stop cutting me off. You just did almost a whole hour.
Go ahead, Ms.
discussing
Smith. Go ahead, Ms. Smith.
a bunch of nothing.
Go ahead,
Dr.
Ms. Smith.
Delgado, I want to thank you for this information that you put out. I went to the play this weekend over at North Farmington with, which was beautifully performed by our students at, that did Cinderella. And I had a conversation with a lot of our parents and our students. This is all they wanted. This is all they asked for, and I thank you. This is all I wanted. This is all I needed to hear, because we need to hear from the superintendent. Regardless if we get a letter from the principal or whatever, this let us know that you do care and that you are out there, that you want this to be taken care of. This is all I'm asking for. Now, I'm going to say to you, I am going to stop you from stop cutting me off every time I open my mouth, because here's what the problem is. When our community sees a board member constantly attacking an African-American Latino woman, this is why our parents refuse to come out and speak. This is not the Cheryl Blau show. This is a Board of Education. As you have stated several times, this is our meeting. This is the only place where we can talk. You sat here and rambled on for almost an hour about a whole lot of nothing. I am going to speak. These people voted me in, and I am going to give him his accolades when he deserves them. And you are not going to stop me. Do I make myself clear? I am going to demand my respect. And you're going to respect everybody at this table. You're not going to make this your show. Again, Dr. Delgado, thank you.
Moving on to our discussion items, the Oakland Schools Board of Education election. Ms. Heinrich.
Yes. Oakland Schools has a Board of Education, and the members of the Board of Education are not elected in a general membership. They're elected by the school districts. And so there's a timeline that we need to talk about. On May 6th, we haven't received the candidate list yet, and we will not receive the official candidate list from the Oakland County Clerk's Office until May 6th. And our next school board meeting is May 7th. By May 13th, each school district board of education has to have a representative to vote, and they also have to have an alternate. And so this has to take place before our second meeting in May, and so therefore we need to make all these decisions on May 7th meeting. So fellow board members, when that information comes out, we need to be diligent in looking at the candidates. And so the designated electors cast their ballots in person at the elections scheduled to take place on June the 3rd. And so we have to have a resolution adopted at the May 6th meeting to designate a representative and an alternate and we also have to name two candidates that our district is supporting. And it's important to not only send a representative, which I'm volunteering to be because I'm the Oakland School Board representative, but we also need an alternate in case the election procedure, that if there's a tie vote, then there's going to be a second and subsequent round of voting. And so it'd be nice to have somebody to discuss with, the direction and make sure that our school district is represented. So I'm just sharing that because it has to be a discussion item and then an action item. And so at our next school board meeting on May 7th, this will be an action item where we have to declare the support for the two candidates, and we also have to declare the representative and alternate representative. So whoever wants to be an alternate, let me know. Ms. Weems.
Just a point, you said at our May 7th meeting, we have to take action
We do.
when the list doesn't come out until May 6th?
May 6th. Because our meeting after that is after it has to be, because by May 13th, we have to designate its representative and the candidates that it supports. So this timeline, it's like, okay, they didn't give us a lot of time.
So, Ms. Heinrich, is there any way that we could, you're volunteering and you have been going to all of these.
Right.
Is there any way that we could do this and the rest of you agree that we go ahead and do this now opposed to waiting until, they do have a deadline.
But we don't know who the candidates are. There's two positions, and we haven't had a list of the candidates. We
Okay.
don't know who's running.
Gotcha.
So that's the whole thing.
Right.
That's a very good
And
suggestion.
it's not coming out, and it wasn't at the last meeting, they didn't discuss it.
Right.
And I went through all of my emails, because initially, I thought this was about the budget resolution. And so thank goodness that, we're actually talking about it now, because the rules are that you have to discuss it, and then it has to be.
And then
like
vote,
2
take the vote.
meetings, yes.
The following me, yeah. That's a really good suggestion, Ms. Smith. If we had the candidates, we would definitely follow
Right.
your
But
suggestion.
those aren't, so
yeah.
watch your email on May the 6th, because it's not a lot of information.
Mm-hmm.
And usually the candidates send out statements and say, why they're doing, but there has been absolutely nothing
Okay.
out. So there we go. So, so let me know if you want to be the alternate. Go on June 3rd, I think it's a Monday.
June the
Vote.
Oh,
June 3rd is.
June 3rd is the
June
vote.
3rd is, June the 3rd, 5:30 to 7:30 is the election. And it has to be done in person, no absentee ballots.
Okay.
Last year, I think, or Ms. Weems, you went last year with that.
I think so,
too.
yes.
Yeah, so you're experienced at this, so we will tap you for information. Okay.
So if anyone is interested in being the alternate, they can let you know?
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much. Any other comments or discussion on that agenda item? Okay. Next, we have public comments. Give me just a second to get to my spiel here. If you would like to make public comment, there are cards at the back of the room. Please fill one out with your information, and Mr. Walker is collecting that. I can't find my notes on what I usually say, but I know what I usually say. Oh, you have them from last time? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's all out.
Thank you. Thank you so much. During the public comment portion of our board meeting, members of the community are welcome to address the board. Each community member will have up to 3 minutes to speak. A timer on the screen will display the 3-minute countdown for each speaker during public comment. Thank you for honoring this guideline. We wish to remind our community that this is a meeting of the board held in public to provide transparency, but this is not a public meeting. As a result, we will respectfully listen to your comments, but we will not respond or engage in dialogue with you in this venue. However, please be assured that we are listening closely to every comment, and that a member of the Board of Education and/or our Superintendent, Dr. Delgado, would be happy to speak with you after tonight's meeting to set up a time to engage in dialogue together and further address your concerns. So without further ado, Mr. Bill Lovaway.
Good afternoon and happy Passover.
Thank you.
On budget, we expect to see an education plan in the budget. There was some little bit of it in last year's budget, nothing showed up in the final. As far as the education plan, we expect to see specific line items for educational initiatives, starting with 8th through 12th grade literacy, catch up. 2,000 of these kids are reading below grade level. Wood Creek Fix, 220 kids are reading below grade level. District-wide, 3,900 kids are reading below grade level. That's 43% of our students. We have the funds to pay for fixes. Basically, with our current fund balances, we have plenty of cash. It was $10 million over the 15% limit in 21-22, $7 million in 22-23, and then our budget for this current year is $8.6 million in excess of the 15%. So that's plenty of room. And speaking of the fund balance, I think that discussion ought to be held up until we include it as part of the budget. That's what happens in the real world. Public companies, nonprofit companies all do a balance sheet, which includes a fund balance when they do their annual budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lovaway. Next, we have Dr. T.R. Carr. Sorry, Dr. Carr.
Thank you very much. I just have a couple of things to bring before the Board of Education tonight. As I listen to the board talk about transparency, about working together, about being open, I noticed the board does have 3 large committees: community engagement, finance, and public policy. These decisions a lot of decisions are made in those board subcommittees. Those subcommittees are not open to the public. I asked the board to consider opening those subcommittees to the public because they have discussions on, for example, the fund balance over the last couple of meetings. I have no idea what are the pros and cons for maintaining a given level of spending. It would be helpful if we could have those subcommittee meetings in public so that we can see transparency, so we can work together and we can understand the issues that are brought before the board. The same thing is true for policy. Several issues were referred to the policy committee of the board. Those committee deliberations are made in secret, and I asked the board to open those subcommittee meetings to the public. So that is my request. One thing that I also noticed that today, U.S. News and World Reports released their listing of the 50 best high schools in the state of Michigan. Novi, Plymouth, schools all around us. Farmington Hills was not included in that list of the 50 best high schools in the state of Michigan. There's work to be done. I believe it should be important. I think it should be an issue for every member of the board and for the staff to be able to ask themselves, why were we not included in the list of 50 best high schools in the state of Michigan? The measurement is used for the same for all schools and all districts. So what the issue is, we were not selected to be in the top 50. That is not good. That is not good for us for economic development. That is not good for us in terms of student preparation. That does not mean that some students do not excel. We have some students that do excel and excel very well. What it does mean is we are not doing an adequate job of addressing the educational needs of all the students across all the groups that are served by Farmington Public Schools. I would ask the board to deliberate on that and to get back with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Carr. Next, we have Jenny Krager. Good evening.
Hi, thank you. I'm Jenny Krager, and I'm the secretary at Longacre Elementary. I have a few people who are here as well who are just showing that we are asking you to delay your vote until we're able to finish our negotiations for the ESP group. Currently, I've been in my position for 8 years. When I was hired in, I was making $12.50 an hour. As the lead secretary in the district, without training, without any kind of advance notice, we were given a range when we were hired in, and the range was never considered. It's unfair when someone who worked before me was making almost double when she left of what I was making. We've had a couple of steps since the years have gone on for me being in 8 years, but the steps aren't moving fast enough. Our parapros and secretaries are hired at $15 an hour. Parapros are critical in our district to keep the children back in classes. They get spit on, they get hit, they get vomited on, they have been bled on, they've been punched, they've been kicked. Secretaries have been the same. We've taken on medical degrees that we shouldn't have. We have to be security monitors to the doors. We have to make sure that we're honoring all things with the parents and the children. We are interrupted every 30 seconds. It's a very difficult job, but we do it because we love the kids. We feel that we are not financially valued. And so we're here because we're coming to the board, and I'm asking you to delay your vote in any kind of funding that would negate us to negotiate. We need to be able to negotiate. Last year, the teachers had a win. The maintenance staff had a win. We did not. We've had pennies on the dollar. My coworker, who's been here for over 20 plus years, has gotten a decrease in her salary. For the last 15 years, we have not actually seen any kind of increase. It's a shame when you can go to Novi, West Bloomfield, Livonia, Walled Lake, and they're making double than what we are coming in. Most are starting out at 22, if not 25 an hour. Right now, I'm not even there, and I've been in my position for 8 years. I come early, I stay late, we don't take lunches, we are committed to our jobs and to the things we do. We're just asking for your favor when you're thinking about finances to think about people that you don't always remember. We just are asking that you do something for us. As much as we give back to the school, we need your assistance and your perseverance to really help us get the incomes we need. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Krager. Next, we have Thomas Hull.
Good evening, Board. I got a couple things I want to announce here that's coming up at our Super Saturday meeting. Our first one for this Saturday is the Farmington Chief of Police is coming to our Super Saturday tutoring to have a fireside chat with a student-led conversation for everyone to participate with the kids, and also to answer questions from the community and to be as open and transparent as he can be. I think that's going to be a great opportunity for the community to engage with our police department. The second one would be, which is on March 4th, is the Civil Rights 101 that's held at.
You mean May?
Yes, May, May 4th. Sorry,
Yeah.
thank you, May 4th. With the AKs, which are helping our group with the Super Saturday, they're going to be having a civil rights, know your civil rights type of discussion to know how to advocate for yourselves and everything. So I believe that's going to be a great thing for the community. So that's that. The second thing is we appreciate your response to the incident that happened with the teacher at North. I am very, very, I'm glad that it was addressed quickly and that that was announced. However, we do have an issue because we just had it was an incident happened, not that far ago, and then you had another teacher do the exact same thing, and then a couple other things. And I believe that it was from a subcontractor that we subcontract out these problems. And I think there's a gap in the onboarding or the training of that particular vendor, So I believe that either we get those individuals trained, know what FPS stands for and what the implementation of DEI, or, switch vendors, because we can't keep on having this same conversation every single week. I appreciate, like I said, the transparency, but we do have to get better in order for all of us to get better. And the third thing would be to, well, I'm not going to get into that one, but I'm glad for the transparency. Thank you.
Mr. Hull, before you came in, Dr. Delgado at the beginning of the meeting made some remarks in which he addressed exactly that, how we're addressing that issue. And a copy of this is at the front table, along with two handouts, one that describes the ongoing work related to diversity, equity, and inclusion that's currently going on in our district from our DEI Director and Department headed by Mr. Greg Smith, as well as excerpts from our staff and student handbooks around our expectations and responsibilities for staff on one side and for students on the other. And copies of these materials are on the back table for you. So I think that will give you some good answers to some of the issues that you just raised.
Thank you.
Just asked. Yes, thank you. Okay. All right, next we have Mr. Robert Gaines III.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I want to say thank you for your services to the community, the work that you continue to do with us and for us. Excitedly, we have you here at this table to help make decisions. Currently, we know that in the next meeting, we're going to be discussing the fund balance. As a parapro in this district since 2007, my pay has increased with my steps, which ended in 2012 per se. That was about my 5-year mark as a parapro. In that time frame, I have not at the top of the pay scale seen a total of $1.50 increase. The secretaries in this district, they worked through COVID. many of them in the buildings. They're always giving. They give more than anybody else in this district. They are the faces that we see when we walk in the door. They're the security of the building. You have to ring the bell to be let in by a secretary. They're not just there to be pleasant and smile, but to care for the staff and the students behind those walls. Your food services, transportation, your support staff in this district do a lot. Understanding that the fund balance is important, we're asking that you please hold back on making that decision until everybody's settled their contract. Because the reality of it is, there's people in this district who work here who have to borrow money, unfortunately, weekly with payday loans that they don't appreciate having to pay back either. And as a district that is as well taken care of as we are, because we do have great people in business offices and whatnot, we don't have a rainy day coming for a long time. And I understand that they're always unexpected, but COVID hit everybody and the government stepped in. And so what we're asking is that you please consider the support staff and the lives that are out there being addressed and impacted by the minimal increases that we have received. Not that we're not thankful for those increases, but we definitely would like to receive a thriving wage, not just a almost livable wage. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Ms. Vanetta Sanders.
Good evening. This is my first time speaking. I have a daughter in Farmington Public Schools, and I also work at North Farmington as a counseling secretary. Before I talk about what I actually came here to talk about, something occurred on my way here. And you all talked about the climate and the culture. And I do want to thank Dr. Delgado because we do like to hear from you and how you address issues. But I'm kind of bothered by how I see the board conduct themselves. Just on the YouTube channel, what I just saw when I was coming in here, if we don't respect each other and our colleagues, how do we expect our students or people that come in as guest teachers to be respectful in our community? And I just would like for you all to think about that because it didn't look good on YouTube. So I'm going to leave that at that. I'm here because I also understand that you all are interested in increasing the fund balance target range. Based off of the emails that a lot of our colleagues sent to you all, you responded, and you responded with where the fund balance actually is and how it would not impact salaries or wage increases. And I'm not sure what numbers you're looking at, but 1% of 100,000 is probably a lot. 1% of $1 million is probably a lot, but $36,000 is not a lot, 1%. And I have never worked for a school district and seen the value of pay as low as I've seen it here. And I've worked in Detroit for almost 25 years, and I could never encourage anyone to come here to work because it's just not enough. It's just not enough. It's insufficient. It's not sufficient. We need a thriving wage. In order for a group to, all members of the group to thrive, we have to work together. And so we're hoping that you all support us in increasing the wages and salaries of our parapros and our ESP, because I think they work very hard. And a lot of them have gone through a long time with a pay freeze and not getting those increases. And I've only been here a year, and I think it's going to take me forever to move up the steps if over time there's inflation as we received in the last 2 years, that we're just not going to be able to stay in this district. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stacy Jackson? We will need some additional contact information of some sort. But go ahead. You can do it after, that's fine.
Good evening and good afternoon, Stacy Jackson. Again, who I am in this moment is not important, as it is the people that I'm here to help stand up and speak for. First and foremost, let me first say, new homeowners and new development, when they move into companies or move into cities or want to invest in them, the first thing a new homeowner will ask a realtor is, how are the schools? A school board in the school district of a city is almost like the beacon of why people move to local areas. To hear the parapros and the teachers who are actually on the ground doing the real work say that they're not being equitably compensated for the work that they do is appalling. I did not come here tonight to stand up for them, but rest assured that I am here to speak up for them. When you have people doing the real work in real areas under real duress, they deserve real compensation. I encourage this board to do what they ask. Hold whatever line you need to hold so that these folks have an opportunity to fight and stand for fair and equitable wages.
Folks, please.
They deserve it. Secondly, the point that I'd like to address is that the statement that I heard today was appreciated. But let me first say that it is several years and a few months a little late for me. Racism is not something that can be trained away. Otherwise, we would not still have those issues in our nation. The only thing that has been able to push back racism is reaction and results. Some things should just have a zero tolerance. The fact that someone could say, we can't get rid of a teacher that has placed hands or struck or assaulted or used a racial slur because there's no more teachers in the pool is a travesty. That means there's another layer to this school board on why qualified teachers don't even want to come here to teach. I encourage you to continue to do the real work to get real solutions for your real problems.
Thank you. All right, is there any further public comment? Seeing no further public comment is now closed. I want to thank all of those of you who made public comment tonight for being passionate and also very respectful in the way that you deliver your comments. We thank you very much for that. Okay, next, glasses. All right, next we have some action items. First up, the textbook adoption. Dr. Delgado, Ms. Heinrich, go ahead.
This item was presented in detail at the April 9th Board of Education regular meeting. This is for the adoption of the Civics, U.S. History, World History, and AP Psychology. I move that the Board of Education approve the recommended textbook adoption for Civics, U.S. History, World History, and AP Psychology as presented.
Support.
Motion by Ms. Heinrich to adopt the textbooks for these 4 courses. I didn't hear who supported. Ms. Smith. Supported by Ms. Smith. Any discussion? Okay, then, all in favor?
Roll call.
I'm sorry, what?
Roll call for.
Oh, roll call. Sorry, that's right. Go ahead, sorry.
All right, Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Weems,
Yes.
Ms. Fox,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes. Yes.
I myself, yes. Dr. Blau?
Yes, motion passes. Wonderful. Next, and finally on our action items, we have the 2024-2025 board meeting schedule for next year, which we have all had an opportunity to let me go back, that the Dr. Delgado and Ms. Bauman have looked to make sure that in looking at the calendar, the proposed calendar for the school year at the county level, as well as important holidays for various religious groups, trying to make sure that we're respectful as we can be. So, did you have anything you wanted to say about that?
Can I just share a little bit?
Yeah.
So this is the second year in a row that we appreciate you allowing us to bring this to the board earlier than the organizational meeting. So we have in June a district calendar meeting where Ms. Bauman leads a group of all of our administrators who bring their calendar dates for all of our annual events, including musicals and PTA events and primary events. And part of that effort is to really develop feeder pattern support for our schools. And so our elementaries don't conflict with middle school events, not only for that kind of collaboration between administrators, but for parents who understandably may have a child in elementary and middle school, or middle school and high school, or some of you all three, which is like my wife and I were. And so we really appreciate you approving the board meeting dates first, so when we build our calendar, we build everything around your board meeting dates so we don't have conflicts. So we appreciate your early consideration for these dates.
Awesome. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
If there's no other questions, anything?
Yes. Go ahead. Thank you.
Again, these dates have been reviewed by board members, the superintendent, and cabinet members. Approval at this time is requested in order to coordinate with the upcoming school district calendar meeting, So I move that the Board of Education approve the 2024-2025 board meeting schedule as presented.
Second.
Motion to approve the 2024-25 board meeting schedule presented by Mr. Walker and seconded by Ms. Weems. Roll call vote? Is there, yes?
Discussion?
Yes, discussion.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to say I've reviewed these. I did not notice any conflicts with our district calendar. I did notice that there were 2 months where we only had one meeting. That's not new, but I appreciate that it is due to some holidays. If there is a need to call a special meeting, I assume that we would.
Absolutely.
The only other thing is I did take a look for some special holidays that I'm aware of, but I appreciate that I don't know all of the holidays that exist, and would just trust that we've taken a look at that too in developing the dates. And as long as that's been done, I would support.
We have. We've worked with Mr. Smith and the religious diversities calendar for all of our major religions and representative religions in our school district.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Okay. Any other discussion around the calendar? All right, then let's go ahead with a roll call vote.
Ms. Weems?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
I myself, yes. Dr. Blau?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Moving on to items from the treasurer, expenditures. Ms. Weems?
Yes. Before I get to expenditures, if I might just take a little liberty to respond to some of the comments on the fund balance.
I really would prefer that we wait until another time.
Well, I'd like to just mention that as the
Okay.
chair of the Finance Committee
Go ahead.
and the treasurer, that I am happy to take back to the Finance Committee a recommendation that we consider the timing of the fund balance discussion or action item to another time. And so I just wanted to develop an understanding, and we can do this at a later date, as to what the time period would be for negotiations. There's no rush on this.
On the fund balance.
On the fund balance. As I mentioned before, this is like from years ago. We decided as a board previously that we wanted to move the fund balance towards the state and national recommendations, and also in line with what the auditor recommendations, the independent auditor recommendations were. At the time, because the fund balance was so low, we decided not to move all the way to the recommendation, but to move it in stages. And so thought that this was the proper time to do that. Appreciate that there's some sensitivity around that, and there's the perception that this might provide less opportunity for folks I do not believe that's the case, and certainly this is not driving it, but can appreciate what that perception might be.
Right.
And so again, given all of the comments that I've read, wanted to just make sure that as a finance committee, we were listening to that and can have a conversation. I've responded to a lot of the comments, and hopefully folks got that pretty objectively. And in the future, I'm happy to sort of walk through all of the rationale again, including some of the responses that I've had to some things that were sort of not incorrect factually, like that we were moving to 20%. It's not true. That there haven't been increases, again, not to the extent that folks would like, but I was very appreciative of the fact that the board and the administration over the past few years have really been focused on wanting to be competitive. In fact, in a year where we were already under a contract, we revisited proactively, the district did, and came to the board and requested that we do something to be more competitive. And so that was just another example of where I feel like the district and the board are really committed to ensuring that we have great staff and that we pay competitive wages. So the fact that in a non-bargaining year, a non-contract year, proactively went in to revisit contracts and make some pretty good changes and updates to reflect the years of service and steps, that was all done in a non-bargaining year, which to me sort of signals that this is the direction that we'd like to move in. I can't speak for where the board will be and where the district negotiations will be. I'm not part of a bargaining team, but I can only imagine that that's going to continue. And if it doesn't feel good to folks to raise or take some action at this point, I'm happy to hold off on that for the moment and make that recommendation back to the Finance Committee, see what they say, and I'll come back. But we're not voting on that tonight. I just wanted to make sure that folks kind of understood that. So thank you for allowing me that privilege.
And thank you. That was going to be my first question after the board meeting. Is there an option to move our discussion about the fund balance to after the negotiations? That was going to be one of my questions.
That is what I wanted
Exactly.
to talk to and speak to today. That yes, I will take that back as the chair of the Finance Committee, back to the committee. There is no rush for us to do that. However, again, this conversation is from years ago.
Right.
And we've just been kicking the can down the road. I appreciate that anytime we want to have the conversation, there's some sensitivities, but appreciate that we're coming up on some contracts opening that folks might perceive that to mean that we're doing this on purpose.
Exactly.
That's not the case at all.
And to
So
avoid
remove-
that
correct.
perception, to just even avoid that perception,
Right.
we can, if we can move it, well, you and your committee will decide. but
Correct.
yeah.
So thank you for
Awesome.
allowing me to
Yes, awesome.
talk through
Thank you
that.
for clarifying that.
I'm going back to the treasurer's report. Sorry, it's a long agenda here.
It is, it is.
Okay, I think I found it right here. Okay. I move that the Board of Education approve the expenditures as outlined in the expenditure printout dated April 23rd, 2024 as follows. From the general fund, $13,911,069. From athletics, $197,658. From the 2020 bond fund, $356,959. From the 2023 bond, $541,424. And from the nutrition services fund, $502,116. And from the benefit stabilization fund, $1,507,254. A total of $17,016,000 and $16,476.
Support.
Thank you.
Motion to approve the expenditures report by Ms. Weems, supported by Ms. Smith. Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Do voice vote.
You
can
voice vote.
We can? Okay. Then all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Okay, moving on to our consent agenda. We have the approval of the minutes, the Head Start Director's monthly report, and personnel items. Yes, Ms. Heinrich.
I move that the Board of Education approve the April 23rd, 2024 consent agenda as follows. A, approval of minutes, April 9th, 2024 regular meeting. B, Head Start Director's monthly report. C, personnel items.
Support.
Motion to approve the consent agenda by Ms. Heinrich, supported by Mr. Walker. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Do we have any reports this evening from board representatives? Okay, seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you all.